Mette Hjalager, profesora de la Universidad del Sur de Dinamarca. Vamos a darle un aplauso. Thank you so much, Anne.
Thank you very much. I'm so honored by the invitation to come here and speak. Can I get my presentation up? Very good. I twisted the title of the presentation a bit, so I'm going to speak about innovative potentials of gastronomy tourism in harmony with nature. My name is Mette Hjalager. I'm a professor at the University of Southern Denmark. I'm also the editor-in-chief of a journal, an academic journal called Gastronomy and Tourism, which I hope all of you who are in universities might want to publish in. There is such a lot which needs to be written, investigated, etc. Then I need this one. I don't want to discourage you, in fact, but perhaps I am a bit. We have to feed the tourists. And how do we feed the tourists? I think the majority is something like what you see here. Or feeding the tourists could also be this, which you could find all over the world in more or less the same formats. And the standard menu, Wiener Schnitzel or Bistecca or something. Or food courts found more or less in the same format all over the world. So feeding the tourist is very much a standardized thing. But there is also a contrast. Something is coming from below. And I do admire what is happening among other places in Spain at the moment, in my own country as well. Creative chefs and creative food producers are actually contributing to something new, something different. But still, it's what I call sometimes, when I want to tease a bit, it's a pincet cooking. It's celebrity cooking, and we might want to move a bit further than what we observe on the plates, what we observe in the restaurants. We have to make a much broader look. So I would like to talk about that feeding is for tourists is at the moment a very standardized affair, and that will be the case for the future as well. So much of what happens need to be happening about quality development has to happen in the standardized world. But there's not many calories for the brain in many of the options that tourists have. My arguments in this presentation is that innovative discourses point to more sustainable and integrative formats of tourism and gastronomy. But tourism and organizations and enterprises also need to be much more proactive in order to ensure both new and wider touristic experiences and at the same time better harmony with nature. And the harmony with nature, which I think is interesting. I would like to present to you 4 innovative emerging trends in gastronomy and tourism. And it's a kind of academic exercise, I would say, but also touching on some of the points that the previous speakers had. Getting closer to the resource is one of the issues. Curating landscapes and built heritage, another thing that I would like to mention some examples about. Encouraging connectivity, and last but not least, advancing smart transparency. Getting closer to nature, yes. This is from the Vatn Sea in Denmark, and the tourists are literally treading on the food resource. These are the oyster trails. And what you see here is that people, in order to get an experience, they put on the waders and go on the trail and they pick their own food. So this man might have a very good experience and even an exclusive experience, and he pays a lot of money for it, I can assure you. But the Wadden Sea is an UNESCO World Heritage protected area. It's also a place where sustainability has to be in the front of the head of the tourists. The oysters are an invasive species, and they are also endangering the mussels, which is a source of feed for the migrating birds. So the tourists are actually invited to do what they do here. Come and help us to get rid of some of these bloody oysters. And it has to be told, and it's part of the narrative about oyster tourism in the Wadden Sea area. This is experience which goes much beyond what you see on the plate in the restaurant. This is another example from Iceland. It is a Vågafjord's cowshed restaurant. And the cows are actually kept right beside the restaurant windows, and the people can also go and milk a glass of milk if they want. And they can get the beef and they can get everything. So getting closer to the resource, there are so many good examples of this, and getting to food courses might actually get hands on village life as well. I could mention a lot of them, but the challenges for tourism development and the challenges for all of you who are representing authorities or who are representing tourism organizations is to get access across space and place. Get access to the place where the food is actually produced. That is not an obvious thing to do. That's why we always go to restaurants, because that is a simple concept. But getting across to see the places where food production takes place is not that easy. It's also about designing experience-scapes in new ways. It's about ensuring simultaneous agricultural viability and productivity. Having people in the cowshed actually reduces the productivity, and you have to earn your money and make other types of value chains. And it's not the least about handling food safety issues, and very often we tend to forget about it. The next emerging trend I see is about curating landscapes and built heritage. Oh, this is wonderful, isn't it? And you would like so much to sit there and drink your glass of white wine while you look at the beautiful cultivated landscape. That's part of the experience, to observe, to gaze outside the area and see what is there. But what we see very often is something like this. This could be in the hinterland of here. Degrading landscapes. The abandonment of agricultural land is quite immense, and very, very astonishing to see figures about this when we also see that the population need a lot of food, as Stefan Göstling told about. That we see landscapes like this, which used to be nice, cultivated places. But people want to see the landscapes. They want to see what's happening in this is from northern Norway. This landscape with the drying of fish is so depending also on sustainability, because drying fish can only take place in really clean air. You look at the landscape as part of experience. Also, you're not eating. This is tobacco, so. But it's just to tell you some of the beauties of the combination of the produce from the ground, the things you eat and consume as tourists. But we also see, this is from Serbia. You also see the an immense neglect of the built environment and the traditional building, which in some ways belong to what you see. It's more like this, isn't it? I'm sure that the pizzas are grown very well in this but it's not a place that you would like to come and gaze as a tourist, not immediately. But something is happening in agriculture, and I think that we should also be aware of what happens outside the tourism boundaries. You know what that is? That is a weeding robot. It's for organic agriculture, and it's addressing some of the problems with the pesticides and not using pesticides. And these machines are coming up. And what happens? What are the possibilities for tourism? You say, she's crazy. But this kind of machinery, these kind of agricultural developments actually make it possible to change the landscapes and the experience of landscapes, because now suddenly you can program the robot to address the weeding of small spots like this, or in the terraces that we saw before. So we should be so aware of what happens in agriculture, agricultural scientific development, and trying to align it with what we see in tourism. So when we're talking about curating landscapes and built heritage, it's suggesting landscape protective measurements. Gastronomy and tourism is not only about the food, it's also about the prior part of the value chain. It's about encouraging building conservation in rural areas. It's also about coordinating the agendas of FAO, World Food Programme, and UNESCO. I haven't heard really, we are in a UNWTO. I worked for FAO recently, and they are moving into tourism. And when do we see UNWTO moving into agriculture? I think there's a need to try to get across the boundaries here. It's about putting pressures on local governments for a variety of reasons that I also mentioned. And it's about using landscapes and buildings in promotion of place and in marketing materials. The third field is about encouraging connectivity. This boat is placed in Copenhagen harbor. It comes from a small island which produces a lot of apples. And every year they come to this place and let people purchase the apples. But what is interesting is that the alliance is made between the local producer association and the restaurant association in the very neighborhood. So it's not governed by any tourism organization at all. It's completely bilateral. And by being present and by the demonstration value of apples through the local restaurants, a big supermarket, high-end supermarket, has actually is marketing the apples for the rest of the year. This is only a one-week event. So connectivity takes place in so many interesting fields. And this guy also, perhaps he is a member of a fishing an angling association in his own home country. And he has alliances with other anglers in many other countries through his networks, which also go far beyond what is normally seen as the way to communicate. And he's a good guy. He's an ambassador for the product, but he's also an ambassador for the environment where he can catch his trout. And he might actually be a much better ally for gastronomy and tourism than the restaurant that serves fried trout. Connectivity also is made by organizations like this, the Woofing, where people are working voluntarily in organic farms, and there's a worldwide organization intermediating this activity. And it's marketing of a tourism product which is not governed by local governments or national governments at all. The connectivity also takes place like this, where you can adopt an olive tree, and of course you will get a bottle of olive oil to your door, but you can also come and visit your olive tree. That is tourism, and that's making new types of connections. So just to make a few points about what the challenges is for tourism and development in this respect, it's about making alliances with NGOs. Perhaps NGOs you would never have thought about. It's about linking urban and rural actors in new ways, and actors also across national boundaries. It's about combining different relational strategy. Perhaps it's not only about marketing, it's also about building human relations. It's including after sales and continued relations so that you will consider coming back. And it's not the least about mastering social media. Oops. Advancing smart transparency. A lot of people are talking about big data. And big data is also an issue for gastronomy and tourism. And for example, like this, where ingredients can be looked into in greater depth, where you can follow from where the chicken has grown up till it ends on the plate, your plate in the restaurant. We do not see a lot of these things yet, but I'm sure it will come. It's also about logistics in new ways. Just to show one example, we are looking for creative ways of shorter food chains in order not to ship things with flight all over the world. And this is just one creative thing from Holland. It's about ingredients and safety issues as well. How do we make this smart transparency so that which might also benefit the local population if it's properly done. Perhaps the tourism actors can be first movers for the benefit of not the least the poor and the deprived parts of the world. Data is a lot of things. What is this? It's a restaurant in London which 3D prints food. You say, this is nothing with the original food. but it's just, well, mentally you can think data in so many ways. And in order to make these, to make broccoli like this, there's a lot of data to be processed. Oops, again, I'm too fast. The challenges for tourism development here, it's inviting tourists into not only to use data, and you use data, for example, if you read a brochure or use your app to find something, but also to produce them, send them back, being part of a citizen or tourist scientists, contributing back to the community and its development ambitions. There's a lot of cities around the world which work with smart city planning and smart initiatives. And slow food was actually one of the first this type of activities. It is emerging so fast and so interestingly, and I have not seen gastronomy into this yet, but I'm sure it will come. It's also about giving meaning to data. Using data also in scientific endeavor in our universities, but also letting the tourist read with us, opening, creating a transparency. So my conclusion here is that food is potentially a very important driver for tourism development. But tourism businesses and authorities are not first movers. I heard that UNWTO said, well, create some branding images and go with it. No. That is old-fashioned. That is not how it works in 2017, and it will definitely not be the way it works in 2025. We have complete other ways to work, and we have complete other actors in this field. We need to encourage them to go into this. And we have to welcome a large number of creative entrepreneurs, also entrepreneurs that we have not thought about before. For example, NGOs, communities, governments, scientists as well. We need them to make things happening. And these 4 trends, do not say they are inclusive of everything. And the examples that I have given are only a few examples. I'm sure there are a lot out there, and you can contribute as well. So I hope that we will keep our minds open for what will happen and keep the discussion going as well. Thank you very much.